In the stillness of Shanxi province, not far from the modern city of Xi'an, over 8,000 clay soldiers stand frozen in time. Known as the Terracotta Army, they've captivated the world for decades. Each figure, life-sized and uniquely crafted, was buried to guard the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, more than 2,000 years ago. But what most tourists don't know, what most documentaries politely omit, is the dark legacy tied to these statues. Not just death in the abstract, not metaphorical curses whispered across dynasties. Actual bodies. Researchers, workers, and even casual looters who came too close and never walked away the same. Some died, some vanished. Some simply broke mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And beneath it all lies a pattern no one in authority is willing to officially admit. Contact with certain terracotta figures appears to come at a cost. The story begins in 1974, when a group of farmers dug a well in dry earth and struck something hard. At first, they thought it was just old pottery. Then a head, a soldier's head, with chiseled features and a strange expression, calm, yet watching, always watching. Archaeologists were summoned. The Chinese government moved swiftly. Excavations began, and the full magnitude of the terracotta complex came into view. Chambers upon chambers. Horses, chariots, weaponry, generals, infantry. An army in waiting. But as the years passed, subtle anomalies emerged in the official records, if you knew where to look. A young assistant researcher in 1979, Li Wen, died suddenly of acute pulmonary failure after entering Pit 4, a chamber that was later sealed from the public. No images of the statues within have ever been published. No cause of contamination was ever confirmed. In 1986, 3 preservationists working on a batch of newly excavated figures fell into psychotic episodes. One tried to attack a soldier with a crowbar, screaming, "He told me to." Another was hospitalized after speaking in what experts later claimed was untranslatable dialect. The third left the field entirely and became a monk. These cases, scattered across years and provinces, might sound like coincidence, until you trace their common thread. Each incident occurred during contact with a unique subset of statues, those showing signs of post-firing modification. Unlike the other soldiers, whose features were molded, then baked in kilns, these figures appeared to have been altered after hardening, faces carved deeper, eyes hollowed, and in some cases mouths opened wider, as if mid-scream. In 1992, a French sinologist named Dr. Laurent Dufresne published a short paper proposing a radical theory. These anomalous figures were not created by imperial artisans, but added later, possibly during a period of rebellion or spiritual crisis. His work was discredited and scrubbed from most academic forums within months. His next project was canceled, his visa revoked. He died 3 years later of accidental poisoning. The official stance remains clear. There is no curse, no anomaly, no unexplained deaths, just clay and history. But behind closed doors, China's Cultural Preservation Office allegedly maintains a private registry, one that tracks statues classified as Type D figures. These figures are tagged, stored separately, and never displayed to the public. One such statue, D173, was photographed briefly in 2002 before its removal from an archival wing in Lintong. The image shows a kneeling archer with an unusually twisted posture, a mouth split almost to the ears, and deep-set eyes filled with black residue. The caption reads only, "Do not engage directly. Use sealed gloves. No visual exposure longer than 30 sec." What was baked into this clay? Poison? Mold? Something older? Or were these figures never just symbolic at all, but vessels, not of memory, but of something else? By 2005, the whispers around the so-called Type D figures had reached a point where even veteran archaeologists started refusing field assignments. Internal memos from the Shanxi Provincial Museum, never intended for public release, revealed a stunning fact. Nearly 11 of these anomalous statues had been quietly removed from the original excavation sites and placed in off-site containment, not for preservation, for quarantine. According to leaked documents, one such figure designated D041 was known internally as the Listener. Unlike other soldiers whose mouths were firmly closed or neutral, this one had ears exaggerated in size and an expression so vivid that one curator described it as the face of someone absorbing pain. The statue emitted no sound, and yet workers reported hearing faint murmuring, even in sealed storage. Auditory hallucination? Mass suggestion? Possibly. But 3 staff members filed for psychiatric leave in the weeks after handling it. In 2010, the situation escalated. A graduate student from the University of Beijing, Xi'an Han, was part of a digital imaging project scanning surface cracks for stress analysis. His focus was a relatively unremarkable kneeling soldier, D088. But while reviewing the 3D scans at night, he noticed something that hadn't been visible to the naked eye. Tiny inscriptions carved deep inside the figure's throat. Not Chinese. Not even recognizably human. He submitted his findings to a supervising professor. Within 48 hours, his laptop was confiscated, and the imaging project was suspended indefinitely. Zhao Han never returned to the university. His last known communication was a brief email to a colleague. There are faces inside the clay. Faces that weren't there before. Theories swirled. Could the ancient sculptors have embedded organic matter, flesh, bone, even human remains into the statues as part of some ritual? Was the residue found in the eye sockets of certain figures a type of fungus with psychoactive properties? Or did something entirely different happen during the final years of Qin Shi Huang's reign, something too dark to survive in official records? To understand that, we need to go back to the emperor himself. Qin Shi Huang was obsessed with immortality. He sent envoys in search of the mythical elixir of life, consulted alchemists, and consumed mercury pills believing they would extend his reign. His mausoleum, still unopened, is said to contain entire rivers of liquid mercury and a recreation of the heavens above. His fear of death wasn't just political. It was personal, desperate, and as his paranoia grew, so did the brutality of his rule. Historical fragments mention a secret order of artisans and necromancers. Yes, that word appears even in the ancient sources, known only as the Earthbinders. Their role? To ensure the emperor's protection in the afterlife by binding hostile spirits to clay so they may serve instead of strike. Some scholars dismiss this as poetic metaphor. Others aren't so sure. One passage in the records of the Grand Historian, typically translated to reference binding evil with stone, uses a variant character that also means trapping the dead with mouths. A terrifying phrase, and one that casts a new light on those figures with gaping jaws and contorted lips. Fast forward to 2016. A private team of forensic specialists was granted limited access to sealed crates from the original digs as part of a secret restoration review. One crate was mislabeled. Inside was not a standard warrior, but a figure with no eyes, no ears, and a mouth unnaturally large. Its hands were clawed into its own chest, as if trying to tear something out. The team lead, Dr. Megan Hargrove, recorded in her journal, "It's as if this thing wasn't sculpted, but frozen mid-screen." The figure was reclassified and quietly removed. No mention was made in the project summary. Dr. Hargrove resigned 3 months later and moved to rural Canada. When contacted in 2021, she refused to speak about the experience, stating only, "We weren't studying a statue. We were dealing with containment." Whatever these cursed terracotta figures are, post-imperial edits, spiritual cousins, or simply elaborate misinterpretations, one thing is becoming clear. Something happened during the creation of the Terracotta Army that was never meant to be unearthed. And every layer of soil removed brings us closer, not to understanding, but to repeating the same error the emperor made, thinking we can control what we barely comprehend. In 2018, a team of Japanese documentary filmmakers was granted rare access to non-public storage areas near the Lintong excavation base. Their assignment was routine: produce a cultural heritage piece for educational broadcast. But the footage they returned with was anything but ordinary. Unintentionally, one of the camera operators panned across a poorly lit containment wing. For only a second or two, the lens captured a row of crates labeled in red, Level 3. Visual restrictions apply. Suda, curious, enhanced the frame in post-production. What he found was a statue unlike any previously documented. No armor, no insignia, and no face. Just a smooth, humanoid-shaped terracotta in material, but completely featureless. The only detail was a large vertical crack across its torso, from which a black powder seemed to have seeped out. Days after the review session, Suda suffered a sudden seizure. He never recovered full speech. The footage was confiscated. The documentary never aired. And the remaining team was asked to sign revised non-disclosure agreements under the oversight of both Chinese and foreign intelligence officials. Yes, foreign, because by then, the world had quietly taken notice. Unofficial reports suggest that samples from the so-called Type D figures had been analyzed at high containment. Biolabs in Europe and the U.S. What they found was neither fungal nor viral. Not bacterial either, but still alive. The sample displayed metabolically active properties in sealed, sterile environments reacting subtly to electromagnetic exposure, changing density under observation, and in one case, disappearing entirely from containment without trace. One anonymous source described it this way: "We're not dealing with something living by our definition. We're dealing with a reactive pattern, a kind of memory, embedded in mineral form, that doesn't need cells to respond. It's not biology. It's architecture of fear. And here lies the heart of the Terracotta Curse, not in poison, not in myth, but in the possibility that some ancient process allowed emotion itself to fossilize. Pain, terror, rage compressed into form and locked in clay. What if these weren't just soldiers? What if some of them were victims? Not carved, but cast. Qin Shi Huang was a ruler known for burying enemies alive. Entire families of scholars and dissidents vanished into the foundations of his empire. Could it be that some of the army wasn't molded, but entombed? That within the statues are echoes of real people, trapped in a process meant to force obedience even after death? It would explain the fractures, the twisted mouths, the figures that don't match the official templates, and the screams that no one admits to hearing, but some still do. In 2020, one final clue emerged. A German researcher, Dr. Elias Roth, published a brief abstract online before the page was taken down. It claimed that one of the terracotta samples, when scanned with high-energy neutron diffraction, produced not mineral data, but a sequence resembling phonetic waveforms. Sound embedded in clay, not music, not voice, but something rhythmically precise, like a message recorded in stone. He translated the pattern into audio and played it once, privately. The next day, he deactivated all social media, erased his professional website, and fled Berlin. His final tweet read, "We should not be listening to this. It's not for us." And maybe that's the point. We treat history like a puzzle to be solved, a vault to be cracked open. But some artifacts were never meant to be admired. Some are not legacies, they are warnings. Not everything buried wants to be found. Not everything made from clay was shaped by hands. And not every statue stands still. In the heart of Xi'an, tourists continue to marvel at the Terracotta Army, posing for photos, buying replicas, tracing their fingers along the cold faces of soldiers who never blink. But beneath the surface, in sealed pits and dark archives, something older waits, watching, remembering, because curses don't always kill with drama. Sometimes they wait. And sometimes they learn.